Yes, I have a couple interesting nuggets here to pass along concerning the Iowa secondary that you probably already know. Maybe not the exact numbers, but this will be of no surprise to anyone. Since, let's see, this is going back to 2009, Iowa's intercepted 234 passes. That is the number one number in all of college football. So they lead in interceptions going back to 2009. They are fourth in pick sixes during that time. Now, this past season, as you well know, and you've discussed this here, for as well as the secondary played this past season, and minus Cooper DeJean over that back stretch of the season, didn't intercept quite as many passes as they typically do. 10 interceptions for the team. That was 65th in the country, but still airtight pass defense. Number 2 to Ohio State in yardage per pass attempt given up. So people may have caught the ball once in a while, but didn't go very far. So that's the Iowa secondary. And of course, Cooper DeJean was going to leave, but with all the talent that could have gone to the next level this offseason, guys like Quinn Schulte, of course, Jamari Harris, Sebastian Castro, you and the rest of the Iowa faithful have to be ecstatic about the decisions that were made.
I think so. And I made the comment, I published a video earlier today on my channel about Quinn Schulte had not talked formally about his decision to return. He is not a guy who loves a ton of fanfare. In fact, I don't think he ever made an individual announcement about his decision to come back for a 6th year. He's a former walk-on from Cedar Rapids. So no doubt he bleeds black and gold and is just excited to be back for a 6th year, and fortunate that the COVID year fell when it did to give him this opportunity, because it's the last round for these extra COVID eligible players. So yeah, absolutely agree with you. I mean, obviously you'd love to have Cooper back, and had been told through the grapevine about 2 weeks ago that, man, even up until recently, Cooper really torn about that decision. Like it was not a slam dunk decision for him to jump to the league. I think he, in his heart of hearts, I'll just say, I think in his heart of hearts, he wanted to come back. But I do think, you have to use sound reasoning as it relates to money and opportunity and logic and future, all that. And I don't blame him one bit for making the decision that he made. It was unfortunate to hear, I think it was last week, Mark, that Cooper will not be participating at the Combine. So that's unfortunate. How much will that hurt his draft stock? I don't know. I think it would be foolish on the part of any team in the NFL to pass up on him simply because they didn't see him at the Combine. I mean, he put up a lot of great tape at Iowa. You can look at some of his numbers back in high school. His track numbers were impressive. He is a guy who is going to exceed, whether he's playing safety, corner, whatever he's doing at the next level, and certainly on special teams. So I'll be anxious to see where he goes. I think he's a first-round pick. As it relates to this DB room moving forward, yeah, you get Jamari Harris back for an extra year. Remember, he has missed time. Like, you go back to 2 years ago. He got arrested for OWI, missed a couple of games due to that. Then he had the injury, the serious injury that took him out in 2022. And then this year he had the gambling stuff, where he was out for 2 or 3 games. So it would just be nice to see him healthy. And I think he's a good kid. He was one of my favorite players to interview this past summer. In fact, I republished part of the interview with him on a recent video when he made the announcement to return to Iowa. I'm a Jamari Harris fan, and I'd love to see him take the next step forward, get those interception numbers up, because as you see, just one pick for him last year. Again, this DB room has a propensity to not only make plays, but also have to go pretty deep because of injuries. So, Harris missed time, Cooper DeJean missed time, so we saw a lot of Deshaun Lee. So yeah, he's going to be the leader of that cornerback group. And then Deshaun Lee is back again. He's a second-year guy now. Well, I should say he's a third-year guy. I'm sorry. He's a redshirt freshman last year. He's a sophomore now, but comes back with some experience, having taken the reins from week 1 when Harris was out in 2023. TJ Hall played a little bit. This is his 3rd year now in the program. And I know he really dealt with the injury bug the latter half of last season. I remember, so I've brought this up many a time for people that follow my show. They know that the strong connection out of high school with TJ Hall was through our good friend Don Patterson. Don coached TJ's dad, Terrence, who's a wide receiver at Western Illinois, really good wide receiver at Western Illinois. And TJ was at one time committed to Washington. He was at one time committed to Arizona, and Iowa got him to flip to Iowa. You know, he kind of disappeared off the radar last year, but again, some of that was injury related. And Deshaun Lee did elevate himself, I think, through bowl prep the previous year. So I'll be anxious to see what TJ Hall does. There's a spot up for grabs now with Cooper gone. I would assume that it's going to be a battle between Lee and Hall for that other spot. Now, John Nestor worked his way into some conversation late in the year as well. Chicago kid who is heading into his second year. So maybe he battles for that second spot. I think the bottom line is it's going to be, especially this spring and through winter conditioning, which has been going, it's going to be the race for creating depth and stability, because this is a position that typically requires multiple people, kind of like running back. Like, guys just go down a lot, it seems like. So that's corner. And then as it relates to safety, you get Xavier Wampa back, former 5-star. You hope he takes another step. I know there have been some conversations from the outside that people that think he hasn't really met expectations yet. You know, I don't know. We don't hear his name a whole lot. And part of that is probably because he's doing his job. And no, again, you look at his numbers, sort of modest, 1 interception this past year. But for the most part, that defensive backfield, I mean, they kept everything in front of them, and that's what Phil Parker's unit should be doing. And they are opportunistic, drop some opportunities. I know Xavier was one that had a couple opportunities that he'd like back, but he's returning. You get a 6th-year guy back in Quinn Schulte. You know, the play from the Big Ten championship game that comes to mind, Cohen Entringer running back on special teams after missing a tackle on a punt return or kick return. I think it was a punt return. And he comes all the way back and makes a tackle inside the 5. That play went viral. And I know there were coaches that were reaching out to Iowa coaches like, hey, who's this guy you guys got in the roster? Like, this kid's impressive. This is the type of effort kid you want. So he'll be in the mix. And certainly Sebastian Castro coming back as the cash guy. He was the one I probably did not expect to have returned, because I think he would have gotten drafted. Now, maybe Schulte or Harris would have found a late flyer. I think Castro was probably at least a 5th or 6th round pick, I would think. I'm no NFL draft scout, but he put a lot of tape out there. Go back to the Iowa State game, go back to the Wisconsin game. Both those games were on the road. You know, he's just a guy who plays with a reckless abandonment, if you will. So a lot of experience. There's no question about it. I think more experience with the safety / cash. Couple things I noted on the video earlier today, and I don't have confirmation on this. I did send an email out to Iowa. I did notice through the Iowa roster, the online roster, we've had a couple of changes per the roster. Now, again, these could be clerical errors. There have been clerical errors made on the roster in the past, but I noticed today that Jackson Rexroth, who had at one time been a walk-on DB, had moved down to linebacker, had made the depth chart at one point, actually, I believe 2 years ago at DB, moved down to linebacker in 2023. He is now listed as a DB again. So if he's playing DB, he's almost guaranteed to be a safety. Maybe he's a guy who could work into the cash spot behind Sebastian Castro. But again, waiting confirmation on that. This is the other thing. The roster lists Kyler Fisher, who's played a lot of the Leo spot at linebacker. He's listed as a DB now as well. So, you know, he's coming back for an extra year. He is on scholarship, joined the program out of Southeast Valley as a linebacker. But I believe out of high school, I want to say he was recruited as a DB most places. I think he joined Iowa with the expectation to be a linebacker, which he then fulfilled and was admirable on special teams throughout his career. Got an extra scholarship to come back. Now he's listed at DB. So Iowa, we know, is going a lot more 4-2-5 with the cash, and having a guy like Castro, or, you know, in the past it's been Dane Belton, Amani Hooker on the field, and less 4-3. So, you know, here you have a 6th-year guy that, you know, where's he going to be used? Just in case of injury. So maybe they move him around a little bit and he can kind of be a guy they slide around from cash to one of the linebacker spots. With his experience, maybe he could slide up to safety if you're in a bind. So that was a note on the roster that I noticed today. And then the other one is Devin Hilson. Again, don't have confirmation on this from Iowa. Reached out to communications, waiting for a response. But Devin Hilson came into the program from Des Moines as a running back. He then switched over to DB. I believe was on a couple of depth charts last year, at least a couple of two deeps late in the year at cornerback. I checked today, and the roster indicates that he's back at running back. So we'll check on the accuracy of that. I don't know. That would be surprising to me. That one was probably the most surprising because he had broken into the fray at corner. And with Cooper DeJean gone, you would think, hey, Devin Hilson's got a chance to compete for that other spot, along with TJ Hall, John Nestor, Deshaun Lee. That running back room is stacked, Mark. And I know we'll talk about that, down the line. But unless the staff knows about some, upcoming transfer out, they've got LaShawn Williams, they've got Jazz Patterson, Caleb Johnson, Kamari Moulton emerged at times last year. Terrell Washington Jr. is a guy who is a tailback, has got some flexibility too, I think, to line up more in the slot and do stuff as far as catching out of the backfield. And then, they got a young kid out of Des Moines that I'm a big fan of as well. So that's what I've noticed, but I know it's kind of running through the gamut. Rashad Godfrey, Jalen Watson are two freshmen who will also be joining that room. I expect somebody at that position to leave post-spring because they got to trim down the scholarship numbers back down to 85. They're at 92 currently. So somebody is probably going to leave. I'm not going to take a stab at who that might be, but usually that's a room big enough where you're going to have some attrition.
One final note on Cooper DeJean. We were doing our Florida State show last week. One of our guys, James Coleman, who covers the NFL as well, goes to the Combine, goes to the Super Bowl, covers the NFL, goes to all the big events. Just out of nowhere, we were not discussing Cooper DeJean or Iowa. He said, I just said, headed to the Combine, anything in particular you want to see? He goes, I want to see that really fast guy from Iowa, whoever that guy is, that fast guy. I like to see fast white guys run. Okay. I said, that would be Cooper DeJean. He said, okay.
Well, unfortunately, he's not going to get to see him, but
no.
Again, plenty of tape on that young man, and people know I'm a big Cooper DeJean fan. There's going to be big shoes to fill. Regardless of who takes his spot, you're not only filling the spot at corner, who's going to be returning punts, who's going to be returning kicks. They've done. I'm trying to think late in the year if Cooper. Maybe they didn't even run Cooper late in the year at kick return. I feel like we're so far removed from football season already. I've been so locked into basketball. But I guess they did run Caden Weegan and Caleb Johnson a lot last year at kick return. So
who did Cooper DeJean get hurt against? What game was that?
He got hurt against. No, he didn't get hurt again in any game. He got hurt in practice.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. As soon as I asked that, I thought, that's right. Okay. That was something that, he was fine, played the full game, and then reported during the week, okay, that he's out for the season. Jalen Watson, Rashad Godfrey, they were the two cornerbacks that were signed for 2024. I would expect that they are just going to be developed and not need to see the field or anything like that unless you've.
I know a lot of people, Mark, who think Jalen Watson is the steal of the class. He's the nephew of former Hawkeye running back Fred Russell. He's got an extra gear. So I don't know as a true freshman, what he's going to do. I don't think he's enrolling early. Don't quote me on that. I'm sure somebody will rip me later if I'm wrong on that. But good young kid. I actually had him on the show a few months ago. And he's got good speed, projected as a corner. So maybe he's a guy who could mix into the fray as a punt returner. I know we're not talking special teams today, but we brought up Cooper DeJean. It just kind of gets my gears turning a little bit as far as, who might fill that role. Maybe someone like Terrell Washington is a guy who could fill that role, especially if he's not seeing a ton of snaps at tailback. He's a talented guy. You want to keep him happy. You want to utilize a guy like that, but you're stacked at tailback. Maybe you work him during the spring as a punt or a kick returner, and lessen the load on a guy like Caleb Johnson for kick returns. They've got some guys. Alex Moda is another one that had some good speed coming out of Marion over in Cedar Rapids area. And last year's class, he's kind of buried as of right now at wide receiver. This is his second year in the program. Maybe he's ready to take a step. You always talk about guys who have speed, and those aren't always the guys that end up being the best kick returners. I mean, Desmond King, I don't know what he tested out of the combine as it relates to his 40, but like he was a really good punt returner, not only at Iowa, but in the NFL. Had some really good moments for the Chargers over the years, along with the Texans. So not always the fastest guys. But Cohen Intringer, there's another guy. Obviously has shown some flashes and is athletic guy, and don't know if he'll have a starting role. So can you keep him happy on special teams, maybe in a accelerated role?
Sometimes when we have these discussions, and like you say, football season seems like it was so far ago, so long ago, that sometimes I think, okay, I have this impression of a particular unit. Maybe it's not accurate, but I'm going to throw it out there. Maybe I'm overplaying something that's stuck in my brain from one game or one series. But if anybody was being picked on, was it Deshaun Lee?
I don't really think there was anybody that was picked on, frankly. I mean, they threw to, I know the only examples I can think of where Deshaun Lee was picked on per se, the one I can think of was the game here in Ames. And remember, Iowa State was down 13. They had a 4th down and long, and they basically just, I don't remember who the receiver / tight end. I think it was one of their taller receivers that transferred in. Might have been the Higgins kid, Jaden Higgins. Anyways, they just threw basically a lob up to him in the corner of the end zone, and that wasn't the direction of Deshaun Lee. He went up and grabbed it. It was a great catch. I didn't think it was bad coverage by Deshaun Lee. And I think, week 1, Cooper Lagasse and that Utah State offense tried to pick on him. Why wouldn't you? Here's a guy who's never really played. That was game 1. But I think as the year went on, I think he held his own just fine. I don't remember any moments where I thought that he was the weak spot. And again, Cooper, we saw a lot of Eugene because of Cooper being down late and Jamari being down early.